your South Florida Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep dealer.
You have a good night.
Bye.
June 20th, 2000.
We have to face the possibility that a hostile nation sooner or later may well acquire weapons of mass destruction and the missiles necessary to deliver them to our shores.
This is where the program to defend our shores will begin.
High winds and snow and cold temperatures in the winter, high winds, fog, and rain in the summer.
But do we need it?
This is a game where the offense clearly has an advantage.
And will it really work?
Nothing that we see today says we can't do this.
Missile away, missile away.
Tonight, building a national missile defense, a $30 billion gamble.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
As a political issue alone, it is a killer. How would you like to be known as the candidate who made every American child vulnerable to the nuclear threat of some rogue state? Go ahead, oppose the idea of a national missile defense. Make my day. As a budgetary issue, it's a stunner. $30 billion, and that's the low estimate. Where's the money coming from? Don't ask. What's the rush? Well, the expectation is that one or more rogue states, like North Korea or Iran, may be able to deliver a nuclear warhead aboard an intercontinental ballistic missile within the next 5 years. What if they decide to deliver the bomb by truck or ship instead? Interesting question. We'll try and get an answer tonight. On the more fundamental question of whether it can even be done, you need to understand this. A missile defense system requires the most powerful radar tracking device that has ever been built. And where would it have to be? On what may just be the most remote, environmentally hostile place on Earth, a place called Shemya, at the tip of the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska. Jack Gansler is the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, and uniquely qualified to explain the importance of Shemya as a starting point for a national missile defense program. So before we get into the rest of the program, Mr. Secretary, just tell me why Shemya of all places?
Its geographic location is ideally suited. It's not environmentally the greatest place to be, but it turns out that a launch, particularly, as you mentioned, from North Korea, would go pass right over that. That would be an ideal place for doing discrimination and other characteristics of the targets. And so that would be the first site that we would actually explore to try to put a radar on.
And if indeed we wanted to build the radar on that site, when would the decision have to be made and why?
The problem is the environment there is so severe, you can only bring in barges in the summertime. And in order to make the 2005 date that we've aimed for in terms of the threats, you'd have to actually start to make a commitment this year to start construction of that site, and then you could make the installation by the 2005. What's required at this point is to start to dig and pour concrete so that later you could put a radar on it.
All right, let's put some flesh on that image that you've sketched out for us. ABC's national security correspondent, John McWethy, spent a long time trying to get onto Shemya, and because of the bad weather, it took him 5 days longer than expected to get off again, which, it turns out, is part of this story.
Out the window of an airplane, after a 4-hour flight from Anchorage, the island of Shemya looks barren and remote. It looks that way because it is.
Welcome, Shemya.
It is a restricted island bristling with antenna for intelligence collection, a place you can visit only for official business.
You come off the plane anyways. You can come out and see us, and we'll turn you around and send you home.
It is the remoteness, just 400 miles from the coast of Russia, yet still on American soil, that makes it a perfect location for America's most powerful new tracking radar, the heart and soul of the proposed National Missile Defense System. From here, the Pentagon says it can get an early and prolonged look at any missile fired at the U.S. in anger from a rogue nation like North Korea, Iran, or Iraq, or as a result of an accidental launch from Russia or China. The plan is to use the new so-called X-band radar on Shemya to precisely track a missile, then to shoot it down with interceptors housed in silos near Fairbanks, Alaska, nearly 2,000 miles away. In its initial phase, a national missile defense would be very limited, a defense against just a few missiles, not against a massive assault. That's the plan. But the first hurdle is trying to construct a 10-story high radar in a hurry, in a place where even television correspondents sometimes have difficulty just standing.
It's hard to imagine a more difficult place to operate. 1,500 miles from civilization, the island of Shemya is ripped by Arctic winds and pounded by angry seas.
In World War II, there were 6,000 GIs on Shemya, defending it against the Japanese. During the Cold War, the U.S. kept 2,000 servicemen here as a base from which to run spy planes. But now just 80 people work and live here, no one permanently. 3 months on the island, 1 month off. They maintain the intelligence-gathering antenna, satellite uplinks, an airfield, and a Cold War vintage early warning radar called Cobra Dane. Most people are contractors for the military. Everything that happens here is subject to what people call the Shemya factor.
High winds and snow and cold temperatures in the winter, high winds, fog, and rain in the summer.
You look at the news and you read a magazine or read the papers and they're talking about hurricane force winds, or we're talking gale force winds up to 45, 50 knots, and that's commonplace for us out here.
Steve Fuller is the island weatherman.
I've never seen weather change so fast or so drastically as it does here. It's definitely the extremes of weather.
That makes construction a real challenge. Not impossible, just very difficult.
The primary problem out here is most things are, in the real world, are done on a schedule.
Lieutenant Colonel Peg Watkinson manages Shemya's civilian contractors for the military.
Things coming in on a barge, things coming in on a plane, whether it's people and cargo, just don't get here when you expect them to because of dramatic wind changes, weather changes, and that kind of thing.
To build the new radar, hundreds of ocean-going barges must carry the heaviest equipment and material 3,000 miles from Seattle. Each must wait for just the right moment to safely approach Shemya's one dock. The beaches nearby are littered with evidence of what happens when sea captains underestimate the Bering Sea.
It's a vicious body of water.
75-year-old Eldon Gallier, who was on Shemya in World War II and has worked on ocean tugboats in these waters, says the Bering Sea is unlike any other, shallow, bitterly cold, and unpredictably violent.
There's no way of winning. There's just no way of winning.
This spring, an oil tanker had to wait a month and a half for seas calm enough to unload its cargo here. But the most crucial day-to-day link with the outside world is the airfield. Once construction is underway, several flights a day are essential to bring in people and supplies. There are expected to be at least 300 additional workers. In winter, when nights are long, high winds and snow can shut down all air traffic for weeks.
The highest winds I think I've seen is 125 miles an hour, and snow, blizzard conditions.
He was unable to track higher winds because the instrument for doing so was ripped off the building. In summer, there is another problem, dense fog caused by temperatures that can rise to 40 or 50 degrees, clashing with much colder surrounding seas.
And that can delay things up to days and sometimes weeks, especially in the summer months.
Once supplies and people are on the island, a delicate phase of construction will begin that can only be done with virtually no wind. The uppermost beams of the structure will be lifted by heavy cranes, and a rubberized shroud will be fitted over the top. A puff of wind at the wrong moment could destroy the structure.
Out of the almost 3 years I've been here, I've probably seen 3 days with absolutely no wind.
Storms brew up out here so fast that we'll go from calm seas and a beautiful day, and in a few hours' time we've got 20-foot breakers coming in, and 40 knots of wind howling.
You don't build during them type of winds. It's almost impossible to put stuff up.
Once built, whether on schedule or not, another concern is the radar's vulnerability to a short-range missile attack or to terrorists. That is a concern being used by some senators to argue for a much bigger system, including radar at several locations.
It's very vulnerable. It relies upon one radar in Alaska, which can easily be taken out. Without that, it's totally ineffective.
While the horrific weather and remoteness of Shemya offer its best protection, there are days when the seas are flat. On those days, a determined terrorist coming from a nearby ship could easily land on the island. Pentagon officials say the probability that a rogue nation could launch such an operation is considered very low. But because it is possible, some kind of security force on the island may be necessary, as well as a defense against short-range missiles. But before it needs to be defended, the radar must be built on a demanding schedule that has those who are familiar with the island shaking their heads.
Do you foresee any complications because of the wind and the weather?
I say better them than me. You won't have a nice clean schedule. I'll guarantee you that. It's a whole different world coming out here.
And building the radar is just one of many hurdles that must be overcome before the first phase of a national missile defense becomes reality. John McWethy for Nightline on the Aleutian Island of Shemya.
When we come back, I'll be joined by Undersecretary of Defense Jack Gansler again, and we'll also be joined by Star Wars historian Francis Fitzgerald.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Blue from American Express.
Introducing Blue for Business from American Express.
The MCI 5 cents every day lets me give advice to my buddies. Tweety, I know canaries are songbirds, but...
What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, 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 whoa.
With the MCI 5 cents every day, calls are just 5 cents a minute, every evening and all weekend long. But canaries are supposed to go tweet, tweet, tweet.
Oh, that's only if you don't know the words.
Stay in touch with all your buddies. Call 1-800 every day to join.
The greatest players who've ever played this game.
It was a special time and a special team.
Do you realize how great those moments were?
They made the game what it is today.
What makes it fun is the cheering of the crowd.
It's some of the greatest memories anybody could have.
Fans are the greatest part of football. And this is your Hall of Fame.
Siblings are always at each other's throats. How can you tell if these battles between your children are normal?
Mom! Why did you turn the game off when she was playing?
Typically what sets it off is they're vying for their position in the family.
Eyewitness News takes a close look at sibling rivalries and what you can do to control them. Get tips on laying down ground rules. Rivalry resolutions, tomorrow at 5 and 11 on Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
There's a car out there people are talking about.
World-class engineering, contemporary styling, superbly equipped.
It has a fully integrated vehicle response system to help make it behave exactly the way you want it to. What is this car that gives you such power and control? It's the new 2000 Seville with the North Star system. And now Seville comes with an impressive lease. Call for important lease details. The 2000 Seville, the power of and, the fusion of design and technology. Cadillac.
And joining us now from our New York studios, Francis Fitzgerald. She is the author of Way Out There in the Blue, a chronicle of President Reagan's Star Wars missile defense program. And Undersecretary of Defense Jack Gansler joins us again from our Washington studios. And I want to resume with you where we took off. You must have considered some other place, any other place. I mean, after looking at Jack's description of what Shemya is like, it makes me wonder why you would ever pick that location.
Again, what you need to have is something that can have a long duration tracking capability. That turns out, from a geography viewpoint, an ideal location, as was pointed out very clearly, not from environmental conditions.
But if you also have to worry, and as you indicated to me you do, about schedule, that seems to be probably the best place in the world to pick not to remain on schedule.
Well, you can do some planning. I mean, it's very clear that the winds peak and that the temperatures and so forth have a regular cycle to them. What we have found is that if you plan it for the summer time period, you should be able to get the construction done. Obviously, you have to plan a longer time period, and you have to assume a good deal of uncertainty in your schedule. That's the reason that becomes the single longest lead item on the whole system. It's not the high technology area. It just happens to take so long because of the weather conditions there. Once built and once out and placed, that we shouldn't have any significant weather condition problems. It's trying to get it up that's going to be the problem.
All right, Francis Fitzgerald, help us broaden this discussion out a little bit. You think this is largely a political problem, don't you?
I do, because it's very hard to see what the threat is at the moment, particularly since this is built to stop missiles from North Korea. There have been very many positive developments in terms of North Korea recently, leading up to this summit meeting with Kim Dae-jung. And so many positive developments in terms of rogue states at large that the whole category has been dismissed by Secretary Albright this morning. But that aside, it's very hard to see how any small state would launch an ICBM attack on the United States when it would simply be destroyed, flattened in consequence.
Secretary Gansler, how do you respond to that?
Well, in the first place, there's, as you know, a great deal of proliferation taking place in the world in terms of both the delivery systems and the weapons of mass destruction that are of great concern. Now, independent analyses, the Rumsfeld Commission and others, have said that one could expect the capability to exist in North Korea and elsewhere by 2005 for us to be able to expect that we may well see a threat coming in that direction. Now, whether it'll actually be a launch or whether it's a threat to use it is a different question, but the United States needs to be able to have a defensive capability against such potential threats. In addition to that, I have to say that it's also a law, that the Congress passed a law that as soon as it's technically feasible, we will deploy it. So we have both the anticipated threat from the independent experts and our intelligence community and others, as well as the law that dictate we will do it.
Now, where's the money going to come from, Ms. Fitzgerald?
Well, it's going to come from our wallets one way or another. But, you know, I don't think the money is really the issue. I mean, we have this tremendous budgetary surplus at the moment. The issue is non-proliferation. The issue is what the Russians will do if we start deploying the system, what the Chinese will do, and so forth. The Russians have already told us that they would not start to disarm as they themselves want to and need to for economic reasons. The Chinese have said that they would increase their very small ICBM force. And if they do that, what about the Indians, the Pakistanis, and so forth? There isn't a single other country in this world that is for this deployment because all of them think that it will destroy the network of treaties and agreements that are designed to control nuclear proliferation.
There is one other question, and we'll save it until after the break, but how do we know that whatever that nuclear device is actually going to be delivered by an ICBM? I'll pose that question when we come back in just a moment.
My dad's had this store since I was a kid. Dad's motto was, the customer is always right. Never say no if you can help it. The problem was,
pack smokes?
Kids would try to buy cigarettes. You got an ID for those smokes?
Oh, come on.
It's illegal for me to sell them to anyone under 18. I have heard the lamest excuses.
Her dog ate my ID.
You did?
We need them for a school science project.
They're not for us. They're for my mom outside.
Mom!
I look young for my age.
But that all changed a few years ago when this We Card program started. Now there's no argument. I just point to the sign.
Philip Morris is committed to keeping cigarettes out of kids' hands. That's why Philip Morris is a major sponsor of the We Card program. It has educated hundreds of thousands of retailers on how to recognize fake IDs and uphold the law. And it lets kids know exactly where we and retailers across the country stand.
I'm not alone when I say no, and that's a big help.
Working to make a difference. The people of Philip Morris.
Hey, how you doing? What's up, man?
We can make it. We can make it. We can make it. Got a chance, better take it.
Two of us. Listen, we can make it if we try. Two of us. Talking about you and I.
Get ready for a three-dimensional shot of flavor. Introducing Doritos Jalapeno Cheddar 3D Snacks.
Staying cool this summer?
I am. I don't know about my fridge.
Get a new one on sale during Sears Refrigeration Spectacular. This Kenmore Towel Mount with ice maker is just $599.99. With rebate, save $50 more. Spend over $399 and we'll deliver it free.
Thanks for the scoop.
There's more. Use your Sears card to buy any home appliance over $399 and get 0% financing till January 2001.
Perfect timing.
That reminds me, sale ends Saturday. Sears, the good life at a great price, guaranteed.
Coming up.
Did you see the riot? Authorities are calling it the ugliest basketball-related incident since Magic Johnson got a talk show.
Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher.
Around here, the sun is never hotter and the fun is never greater than now during the Jeep Sensational Summer Event, where you'll find amazing deals. Like $3,750 in total lease values on a two-wheel drive Grand Cherokee Laredo if you're a returning Daimler Chrysler lessee. But you'd better hurry, because even though the fun is sure to stick around all summer, the Sensational Summer Event won't.
See your South Florida Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep dealer.
And we're back once again with author and historian Francis Fitzgerald and Undersecretary of Defense Jack Gansler. Mr. Secretary, let's assume for the sake of argument that we spend our $30 billion and we get the system up and going by the year 2005, and then the rogue state, whichever one it is, decides instead of delivering it by ICBM, it puts it on a barge and sends that barge, however it wants to get into the United States, let's say into Baltimore Harbor, and explodes an atomic or nuclear weapon there. How do we guard against that?
That is obviously something that one needs to consider. I think there's a growing consensus, both in Europe and in fact even recently in Russia we saw, of the likelihood of the potential for threat from these so-called rogue nations, and that we need to be prepared to accept that, and that would undoubtedly be one way in which one could deliver either nuclear, biological, chemical weapons. We certainly have to be concerned about the idea of someone coming into an airport or a harbor with such weapons, and that's an issue that the United States also needs to be addressing.
But I mean, if the great political argument is, look, we cannot afford to leave our families, our nation vulnerable to nuclear attack, before you spend $30 or $35 billion putting a system like this into place, when there are so many easy ways of getting around it, why would you do that?
Well, let me first comment on the numbers, because what we are talking about is a very limited defense system. The dollars that we have for this initial deployment are in the $14 to $17 billion range, not the $30 to $35 billion range. But nonetheless, that's not the primary issue here. The question is whether or not we want to develop a capability to deter an adversary from threatening us with nuclear weapons, partly to keep us out of conflicts, not necessarily to attack us. And we need to have a capability to deter them from using it.
Ms. Fitzgerald, how much money has already been spent on SDI, on Star Wars, over the last 20 years or so?
About $60 billion.
60. So this would be on top of that. We would then be up to about $78 billion.
Furthermore, I don't see this coming to an end. It's not just like building an airplane and it's finished. You know, there are big calls in the Congress, mostly from Republicans, for a much more robust system, for weapons in space, for a continuing process of upgrading this system. So we could keep on spending $30 billion every 5 years for quite a long time.
Are there not also, Mr. Gansler, significant questions being raised about the ability of another nation to deploy decoys and overwhelming, or at least being able to identify those decoys? I mean, that's really beyond the capacity of the system you're talking about building now, isn't it?
No. In fact, the system we're building now is designed to be able to handle decoys.
How many?
Well, when we start getting into the exact details of what type and how many and so forth.
Well, I mean, it's one at the moment, isn't it?
Well, the first flight, actually, what we did was in the first 2 flights, we were not looking for intercepts, so we flew a large number of decoys. We've had a recent flight which had 22 objects out there as a test, not of the intercept, but of the sensors and so forth. The first flight that we flew with a successful flight had a decoy and a tank fragment and then a reentry vehicle. The flight we have coming up, tentatively scheduled now for July 7th, will have a decoy. The idea is to try to start with the relatively few decoys, but enough to be able to show that the system can differentiate between a decoy and a reentry vehicle, and then to add more as the system evolves.
Ms. Fitzgerald, if you can make it brief, I'll give you the last word. You didn't get much of a chance here. Go ahead.
All of this is clearly very difficult to do. The idea is hitting a bullet with a bullet, and that's difficult. And hitting a bullet with a bullet when there are decoys around is even more so. And as I understand from you, doing it through the fog and wind it sounds impractical to me.
Well, it certainly sounds difficult, but this nation has done difficult things before, so let's see what happens in July. I thank both of you very much, Secretary Gansler, Ms. Fitzgerald, good of you to join us. I'll be back in a moment.
You bring so joy. Man, what rhymes with elation?
Creation.
Yeah.
Temptation.
That's cool.
Dividend reinvestment participation. Market capitalization. European market fluctuation. Industry globalization. Assets allocation. What?
When we created a smarter kind of investment firm, we created a smarter kind of investor.
Too many syllables?
The Batmobile is jet-powered, bulletproof, fireproof, and reaches speeds over 300 miles per hour. Could we possibly improve on it? Yes.
OnStar, how can I help you, Batman?
It's all the help you'll need on the road. Win a trip to Warner Brothers Studios in L.A. Play the Batman Challenge at www.onstar.com.
Can you imagine a world where you can take your shade with you? We can. An automatic rear sunshade. Just one of the many innovations you'll find within the sanctuary of the Infiniti i30. It's all the best thinking.
Hi, I'm Bob from FPL.
Hey, what do you live for?
My kids.
Is he a fisherman in the making? What does he live for?
Ice cream.
A good shot.
The ocean.
That one was mediocre.
My family.
My mom.
Your mom? Hey, what do you live for?
My fiance over here.
You better say that, especially on TV.
No matter what your reasons are for staying safe, you should always stay away from power lines. Be sure to look up when using ladders, antennas, or pruning saws. Safety is everyone's responsibility.
I live for my family now, for her and for the baby. That's exactly what we live.
On the next Sally, Mom, it's your boyfriend or me.
He made a pass at me when I was only 15 years old.
No, I haven't.
And
you think he's having an affair with your friend's mother?
It's time for the test. Daughter's fed up.
I ain't got nothing to do with you or him.
This teen's moved out.
He's made my life miserable. Called me names. Called me fat. You're bald. Do you like it?
Mom, choose your boyfriend or me. Next Sally.
Tomorrow at 10, only on Channel 10.
Tomorrow on Good Morning America, political analyst George Stephanopoulos assesses the various candidates for vice president. Veep stakes tomorrow morning. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
Nightline is always on with abcnews.com, part of the Go Network. You can order a transcript or video cassette of this or any other Nightline broadcast by dialing 1-800-CALL-ABC.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Wednesday, antidepressants. Do they have a dark side? The companies say no, but are these feel-good drugs bad medicine for some? 2020 investigates Wednesday.
Our community.
We have got to be honest enough to say we are
divided, torn, in denial.
Bishop, you're absolutely right.
Can we unite? In a live town meeting from downtown Fort Lauderdale, Eyewitness News anchor Dwight Lauderdale and political reporter Michael Putney continue our discussion on the divisions in our community.
We have to respect each other.
Building Bridges, a live 1-hour special, Wednesday, June 21st at 8 p.m. on the one and only Channel 10.
It's another happy day in Uncle Pimp's neighborhood.
Essence is upset.
Upset.
Uncle Pimp is going to teach us about the family business.
We got to keep us in the family, baby. You name.
No. And wait till you see who else drops by.
I'm selling my...
What the hell are you doing that for?
My uncle is my pimp, proving once again that there's no business like hoe business. Next, Jerry Springer.
Tomorrow at 9, only on 10.
Did you know that when it rains, a lot of heat is released in the atmosphere? There's as much heat released from 1 inch of rain falling over 1 square mile of area as there is from the burning of 12 million pounds of coal.
Don Knows Weather, weeknights, only on 10.
Tomorrow, supermodel Cindy Crawford plus Richard, Jenny, and Joyce Comedy Corner live on an all-new View.
That's what I like about the
ABC Daytime.
Hey!
Children dream of being adopted on the next Mark.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of Politically Incorrect, Bill Maher. Bill's guest tonight, Vicki Lawrence. Former Cosby kid Tempest Bledsoe. Journalist John Connolly. And GOP strategist Jack Berkman.
Thank you very much, folks. I say this every night. I know why you're happy. I actually do know why you're happy. The Lakers won the big championship. And we celebrated with a riot. Did you see the riot? Oh, my God. Fires were started. Storefronts were smashed. Jack Nicholson was overturned. It was... No, the authorities are calling it the ugliest basketball-related incident since Magic Johnson got a talk show. Wow. I thought about it. Oh, that's right. Yeah, actually, he's right about that. All right. Now, the big news in the world of business, I do not understand business. The Seagram Company, which is a huge company, owns Universal, which also has every liquor you ever drank, and Polygram Records, got bought by Vivendi, a French water utility. I'm not kidding, for $34 billion. Now, I have been to France. Considering the hygiene over there, you have to wonder where a French water company got the money. Because they don't... No! Here. No. Hey, speaking of that, listen to this. No, because we try to point out political correctness and stamp it out. Now it's spread to the State Department. There are no more rogue states. We have used that term for decades, rogue states, meaning the bad guys like Libya and Iraq and Iran and Syria, North Korea, Cuba, the bad guys who terrorists and bomb us. Well, apparently we don't want to hurt their feelings. So now we're calling them countries of concern. I'm not kidding. I couldn't make this up. And if they act up from now on, instead of intervening and bombing them or sending troops, we're just going to have them take a time out. So, and finally, the London press is reporting that President Clinton, get this, is shopping for a home after his presidency in England near Oxford, where he went to school. Apparently 2 reasons. 1, he is considering a teaching job there at Oxford. And 2, it's about as far away as he can get from Hillary without learning a new language. All right, thank you very much. Let us meet our panel. He is a respected journalist and the man behind the controversial would-be book, The Insane Clown Posse, John Connolly. John. How are you, John? Thank you for coming. He is a Republican Party strategist and his radio talk shows on WMAL in Washington, D.C. Jack Berkman, our friend Jack. How are you, Mr. Jack? Good to see you. She's a famous actress and talk show host who grew up before our eyes as a Cosby kid, Tempest Bledsoe, right here. Hey, you. Thank you for coming again. And the singer, author, actress, comedian, and talk show host, our buddy Vicki Lawrence is right over here. Thanks, my buddy. How are you, darling? All right. Well, as you know, as I mentioned, we had a little riot here last night. Not really like the... You probably remember the old '92 riots. It wasn't on that.
First time I ever slept with a gun under my pillow. Go ahead. I was scared.
Right, yeah.
I was scared.
Yeah, I was too. I remember getting a gun for that very reason. Not mine, but we got a gun. Well, this was a little riot. 43 bonfires, 12 arrests, 8 cars burned. And a lot of the residents were angry because they said the police didn't really show up for a while. They were apparently letting the crowd blow off a little steam. And
it's just what kids do nowadays, Bill.
You know,
There should have been 300 arrests. If the police weren't living in a culture of fear, you should have had 300 arrests last night. You know, I thought about it the other day. You have a whole community of interest. You have all of these vested interests that have this interest in seeing these allegations of police brutality and misconduct go forward. I mean, every major network, every major cable network has a legal analyst, a political analyst, a psychiatrist, all of whom go on the air within minutes after these allegations like Diallo or Los Angeles or wherever the next firestorm will break. And all of these people have an interest in seeing allegations brought against the police.
Yes,
and
absolutely. Doesn't every person who walks the streets and expects their protection have an interest
proper
in
proper allegations?
Well, you know,
Hey, listen,
did you not? For a lot of years, and cops screw up. I mean, that's just the sad fact of American life. I mean, that just happens. I mean, the Diallo shooting, and some of the others in New York, some of the others in the rest of the country. Last night, what happened out here was the cops didn't have a large enough show of force before this thing came out.
That's exactly right. And you know what else? Did you not? You guys. Can I just say something? Born and raised here in beautiful Los Angeles. I remember when you could see Catalina on a clear day. Okay? Now, I'm sorry, but we looked at the Staples Center. Al and I were in New York last night. We saw the big screen. We saw all the people standing outside. We were lying in bed watching the Lakers. We looked at each other. We went, riot. Why was that big screen there?
Yeah.
Why are they encouraging people to loiter outside the Staples Center?
Right.
The police are afraid to enforce the law because they're afraid their picture, their image is going to be up on Geraldo Rivera, and they're afraid they will be the next cop.
They should be afraid.
Only if they do something wrong.
Exactly. They should be afraid. I mean, you have to understand, it's such a powerful position. I'm driving in my car. If some light starts flashing behind me, I've got to pull over.
Because you're speeding.
No, I don't even have to be speeding. I've been driving the speed limit and been pulled over and put in the headlights.
Yeah, you never heard of driving while black, Vicki?
People like
and asked how much my car cost me.
People
what
like
am
Al
I leasing it
Sharpton
for?
and Jesse Jackson have created this culture of fear. They have created
about Jesse Jackson, Jack. It's about as the ex-policeman.
It's about cops killing people they shouldn't kill. It's about cops firing 41 bullets at somebody who's unarmed.
What I'm reaching for my wallet.
The reason was the cops were afraid, probably, but that doesn't help the man who's dead, does it?
I want the police to interrogate me without shoving a broomstick up my ass. And if they decide to do that, I want that police person in jail for the rest of his life.
Wait a second. Let's not distort the facts. It was a plunger. But wait, the police, see, after this, we talked about the Central Park incident last night on our show. There was that incident about a week ago after the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
Tail hook in the park.
Same thing.
Yeah.
People said the same thing as they did about this last night. The police didn't do anything.
Don't you think the police are
this-
scared? Don't you think cops are scared to be cops right now?
I do think
They
that's
don't
so.
have to be scared to be cops.
Go ahead.
If they're
think they
doing
do.
their job, they
I
have
think
nothing
they do.
to fear.
If there was a picture on the front page of the LA Times today of a guy with a hose hosing down all those people last night, instead of Shaquille dunking the basketball, the cop would feel horrible, and we'd be starting this whole thing all over again about how the horrible the cops are.
But wait a second. Is that our
because
job?
They're scared too. I think they're
I
scared.
agree with you. I agree with that.
That's not true.
Okay, but
Wait, I'm sorry, that's not true. You know what you're talking about.
Constant, in New York City, hundreds of times a day, police officers put themselves in harm's way. We never hear about it.
Absolutely.
Because it's not doesn't make the papers. It doesn't happen in Midtown.
Absolutely.
What happens is with Central Park, there's no doubt in my mind that Giuliani, who really runs the police department, told Safer, don't cause a problem, and that was told to the troops. Because I know cops for years, they would not stand idly by and have women attacked. They would just not do it. Somebody told them, just look the other way and don't cause a problem.
There was no show of force there.
The issue is why
there was
is
a
that
lot of cops that
happening?
just
The
didn't do
issue
it.
is-
No, I
the issue is
was
why
just
is that-
there yesterday, and the New Yorkers that I talked to said they felt that there was not enough show of force there at the very get-go. And
That may be
because
true.
they said this particular parade is a problem every single year.
But they're presenting us with a false choice. And the choice is, they're saying, look, if we act and shoot unarmed black guys, we're wrong.
Why do they have
and if
to
we
shoot
don't
them?
act and let nuts rampage and tear women's clothes off, we're wrong. So we're damned if
But
we do,
you're
we
acting like
don't.
there's no middle ground between
Exactly.
that.
That's a
never go
false
through that.
choice.
Cops never make those decisions. Cops make a decision that they have a job and they're going to do their job.
Yeah.
And that's how they're functionaries.
Bill,
and they don't decide whether to kill somebody or not kill somebody. That's what politicians do, not them.
What is happening?
Wait, they don't decide?
Giuliani cut the cops loose for a long time. I mean, if you will recall, 4 years ago, thereabouts, he wanted to do with fireworks in Chinatown in Manhattan, which has been, 2,000 years people in China have been using fireworks on their New Year's. He blanketed Chinatown. There were no more fireworks. No more. Just gone.
So you're
Why didn't
saying
he do
in both-
something similar to the Puerto Rican Day Parade? Why doesn't he do that?
You're saying in both cases it came from the politicians.
Had to.
They
Always
said,
does.
don't enter that scene. Don't stop the rioters.
Well,
Don't
it
stop.
probably didn't go to that depth, but it probably was, look the other way, don't create a problem. Keep a look. In all these situations where people don't realize there's always a lot more cops than you ever see in the street. They're on reserve. So what you do is you keep them on reserve in case there's a problem, but you don't bring them out.
The question is why, and what you have...
The question actually is, what's our next sponsor? We have to take a break.
Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, brought to you by Discover Card.
Your father and I are raising your allowance to 25 airline miles a week.
While some credit cards offer rewards, like airline miles or gasoline,
I'm so proud of you.
they're not that practical.
I'd like to put 35 long-distance minutes into a mutual fund, please.
And finally, to my wife, I bequeath 12 car rental upgrades.
But Discover Card gives you something a little more useful. Cash.
Oh, yes.
There's always something more to discover.
They know everything about seasonal allergies, every symptom and every side effect. From every over-the-counter remedy they've ever tried. They know everything except this. There's a pill that could make a difference. Pick a doctor, pick a day, and ask about non-drowsy Claritin, the once-daily pill for seasonal allergy relief, and discover what millions of allergy sufferers already know. Occurrence of side effects like headache, drowsiness, fatigue, and dry mouth is as low as with a sugar pill. Claritin. Know the difference.
Introducing Sprint 1000, 1,000 minutes of long distance nights or weekends for just $20 a month. That's as low as 2 cents a minute. Switch to Sprint 1000 at 1-800-PIN-DROP.
Strange? Not as strange as buying Equal when Natrataste contains the same sweetener at a sweeter price.
Wednesday, some call them little miracles, antidepressants. But do they have a dark side? The companies say no. But could these pills produce disturbing side effects, even thoughts of suicide? Are these feel-good drugs bad medicine for some? 2020 investigates Wednesday.
Stop! What are you...
Siblings are always at each other's throats. How can you tell if these battles between your children are normal?
Mom! Why did you turn the game off when she was playing?
Typically, what sets it off is they're vying for their position in the family.
Eyewitness News takes a close look at sibling rivalries and what you can do to control them. Get tips on laying down ground rules. Rivalry resolutions, tomorrow at 5 and 11 on Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
The trend continues. Once again, interest rates are going up. Mortgage rates are going up. Your payments are going up when you buy on credit, except at Rooms to Go, where your interest rate is 0 zip. Just buy now. Get great fashion, great value, with no money down, no payments and no interest until January 2002. Forget interest rates going up. There's no interest adding up. In fact, there's no interest, period. Now at Rooms to Go.
All right, changing subject slightly. Usually when I have an author on, I get to hold up their book. I don't today because the book that you wrote...
Not completed, but...
Not completed, but you had a book contract, and this has been a controversy, made the papers.
Yes, it is.
You wrote a book about Ken Starr and his prosecutorial staff, which was going to be published by Talk Miramax Books. They pulled out of the deal. And what was reported in the papers was that you were saying that basically Ken Starr's staff, who was prosecuting President Clinton for sex crimes, were hypocrites because you said at least 6 of the prosecutors were gay and 1 was dating an intern, which certainly would be hypocritical considering what
relevance has any of that to a criminal investigation of the president for perjury and obstruction of justice? That's my question.
Why don't you let me answer this? It was my book. First of all, I did not say there were 6 gays in Ken Starr's office. That's been stuff that some people have printed on the internet. It's not true. There were a few, but that was totally unimportant to my book.
Why is that relevant?
Jack, why don't you just
why don't you listen a little bit, okay?
Talk a little bit.
My book is about hypocrisy. It's about deceit. It's about duplicity. You had somebody in Ken Starr's office who wasn't involved with an intern while they're prosecuting the President of the United States for the same behavior. You had people who were behind the scenes for long periods of time in the Paula Jones case who were involved in the same behavior, going after the President for the same thing. You had Newt Gingrich, who was seeing somebody for, what, 5 years, and everybody in your game knew about it, and nobody said a word.
He's still talking, Jack.
Nobody said a word about that.
Thanks so much, Jack.
Everybody was talking about family values in 1994, and Gingrich sweeps you people into power, and nobody says anything about his girlfriend, which everybody knew about. Vanity Fair printed it in 1994. So let me finish. So now, Ken Starr's people were engaged in behavior which was just absolutely hypocritical. And I'll give you an example which is just amazing.
So are you saying now that because Newt Gingrich had a girlfriend, are you saying that because somebody in Starr's office might have fooled around with an intern, I don't know if that's true, you allege it, are you saying that because there may have been homosexuals in Starr's office, that Starr should not have investigated the President of the United States for felonies?
Starr didn't investigate the President. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, I'll say it.
The investigation was done by private citizens and handed to Starr.
That's crazy. That's
crazy.
Wait a minute.
In addition to it,
you hired a private investigator.
Men, aren't we just so flipping over this crap? I mean, can't you go in any big corporation in this country and find a boss who's stupping an intern? Can't you find a gay guy who is magnificent at what he does? And if you give a rat's ass about Ken Starr's personal sex life, get a life.
The point is not to get a life.
You know what this is? We're turning Washington into the Jerry Springer show. Like we don't have to know.
Hold a second. Tempest had something to say a long time ago. Go ahead.
What I want to say is, I think everybody is doing these indiscretions and the adultery and the experimentation with drugs, except for me. All that other stuff, make that clear, okay? I don't care. I don't care that he's getting in the office from the intern. I really don't care. I think that's between his wife and his child.
But Bill, none of that's
when he lies. When he lies under oath. When he lies under oath. When he's stupid enough to do it with an intern in his office. I don't want a fool in the White House.
I agree with you, but what does this book have to do with that?
The problem from the beginning.
All I'm saying is, haven't we dragged enough trash
The problem
up
from the
now?
beginning.
Oh, you know what?
The problem is that we lost. Their spin machine beat our spin machine, and I have to take the blame for it. What they succeeded in making this about sex. This was never about sex. It was about an investigation of the president.
Please, just read the Star Report.
Linda Tripp was never going to be subpoenaed. Monica Lewinsky was never going to be subpoenaed until the elves made it happen.
You hired a private investigator. You hired a private investigator with money that Tina Brown gave you supposedly for a book.
Absolutely. You know what for?
You know what
for
I
background,
think?
so I don't have to run around chasing people's
that money. Let me tell you
identities.
something. I don't think that money was ever for a book. I think that was Tina Brown giving you money to investigate the sex lives of Ken Starr.
I have never met Tina Brown, and what you can say is just insane.
Did you hire a private investigator to investigate?
Of course I did, to do background checks on people, because I don't have the time for that. That's really
And what was Ken Starr but a private investigator?
Ken Starr was authorized by statute.
He was an investigator of someone's private life.
Ken Starr.
And he's a liar, too, because he lied about not working
Ken
with Paula
Starr
Jones
had legal
people,
authority.
which he did. He also lied under oath.
But he's not the president.
I know, but what you're naive about is all the machinations that went into getting President Clinton into that one space where they could get him to lie under oth.
That's ridiculous.
He lied.
You're right.
If he had told the truth, men like you all would have sat there and said, well, we've all done it. Go ahead, Clinton. What could you do?
All right, I have to take a commercial. We'll be right back.
Let's go fishing.
Yeah!